Kia ora and welcome to another video in this series aimed at teaching you how to play Riftbound step by step, getting you ready for your first Nexus night. In today's video we're going to be doing another random deck review, but I'm also going to be going over a large number of updates we have made to the programming. So first and foremost, I should hopefully sound a little clearer. I forgot to mention it in the previous video, but I have moved my microphone up a bit just because I realized I was sounding a bit echoey, and I finally found a solution that doesn't leave the microphone too far in the way, but still allows me to not sound so much like I'm in a cave. The other main update we have made is if I swing over, I know it's a little confusing, but we now have two wheels. And these are going to, if I point to them, like that, they are going to represent the two deck lists that we are playing, but we're going to be able to spin them at the same time, so we're not having to spin one and then I pause and then have to spin the other. I choose them both at the same time, and then they will appear above and below me, which is why there's these weird little spins. It's because technically where I am right now is where the results appear, but I want to be in the middle of it because I'm the center of attention. But the other main update I have made is you may notice that these are very, very busy wheels, and that is because I have added two of every single Legends decks into this wheel, with the exception of, if I hover over it, there are 3 Vexes. The reason is because during my Spider Vex video, someone reached out and informed me in the comments that they A, thought that the Spider Vex has so much more potential, and B, left me their deck list, so I have added it as a special edition. Now the wheels at the moment are fully in order, so if I click this button and then shuffle them, and shuffle this one as well, they are now random. I just wanted to quickly be able to point out the 3 Vexes, so that's why I didn't do it beforehand. But if we now go over to the spinning of the wheels, we'll be able to identify the 2 that we are going to be playing today, and I'll talk about the next update once they're finished picking. So we've got a Zed versus an Annie. This is going to be really exciting. They're both from the Fury Chaos domains, and I am just going to quickly mention the update before giving a pause and doing that. So the other one is, I realized while I was playing a video that became unreleased because I just wasn't happy with it, that the lists that I was running were starting to be about a month or 2 old, which is all good and well, but these lists are currently being updated weekly. The first Annie list I did, which was the Tentacles Annie, I actually ended up building it for a friend, and by the time I got around to making it, they had already updated it again. And I realized that is truly unfair for me to have such old deck lists when I could just use new ones. And so what I have done is I have compiled together all of these lists. I have got their links, much like I do for every video, I link them. But I am going to now upload these videos as of today into TCG Arena. And that way we are using the fresh versions of these, not preloaded ones. So without further ado, I will be right back. Welcome back. I know it's a very long wait for you guys. So on the left side here we have Tomb Raider Z, made by I Wish I Was a Sloth, no spaces. And on the right we have Annie Aggro Tempo, made by noxiangrandgeneral. Obviously I will link these lists below, but let us move into a general overview of the main decks before we begin, and then we'll do the sideboard in the sideboard stage. So over on the Z, we have him running the red Z from the Shadows, which is when you may discard 1 as an additional cost to play me. When you play me, if you paid the additional cost, make a Shadow Clone unit token. It does not specify where, so if you play him to base and you control a battlefield, you may play that Shadow Clone to either option. Gotta stay hydrated. Blighted Battle Axe is a great equipment that is it's a double-edged sword. If you're using it, you're high aggression. Cursed Sarcophagus is probably where I'm going to have the most difficulties, because this is when you play this, banish all units from your trash, and then you may play a unit banished with this at exhaust rate. Essentially means that you want to burn a large number of cards. You want a lot of things to end up in your trash, and in result be able to really play from that collection. Same with Endless Riches, when it says when you play this, banish your hand and trash, then burn 7 cards, you no longer get a draw phase. So ABC, no D. Pun intended. Not intended, actually, I take that back. Please ignore me. Next is, if a card would go to your trash from anywhere other than your main deck, banish it instead. And you may play cards from your trash. So the combination here is I'm looking to see maybe an Endless Riches to be played first, to banish your hand and trash, and then burn 7, and then you banish all your trash with this. In that way you can play cards from your trash and cards that you've banished with this, so you have two different locations that the opponent can't really do much about, unless they kill both of these. Next is Pack of Wonders. Pack of Wonders is a great way to return cards, same with Treasure Trove is a great way to bolster. So these two, well, this here will allow you to draw as an alternative, because this just says you can't have to just skip the D phase, but you don't not get to draw. Over to Cleave and Deathmark, Perfect Execution, and Ride the Wind are all great offensive spells. This is obviously Zed's signature spell, which says you burn 3, it has a flow of 1 energy, 2 power, and you make a Shadow Clone token. So this can be made, there's 3 of them, so you can make 6 Shadow Clone tokens and burn 18 cards. This burns 7, and you have 2 of these, so if you have these, both are 14 total, and this burns 18, so you're looking to about burn, quick math, 32 cards, if I'm correct? I think I'm correct, I'm always correct. But you're looking to burn 32 just from these 2 alone. Then you have look at more cards, you have make more units. Ice Survive you can't go without as a core Fury card. Cannon is great because he burns more cards and then you can give spells in your trash flow. Rek'Sai Breacher allows you to play units from anywhere else. Well, if you do, they have Accelerate. Now notice that it doesn't say it has Ready, it has Accelerate. Now Accelerate, by definition, is you must pay, or may pay, 1 energy and then 1 power of the specific card's domain. So if you give, let's say, the Traveling Merchant Accelerate, you will be 1 energy and 1 Chaos Rune. Then you have Rangar Pouncing, which is great as a offensive or defensive play sometimes. Rasa, if you have so many cards in trash, is almost a free card. Shadow Order Disciple, more burn. Traveling Merchant, more discard. And Vi, recycle from trash to your deck. So a good way to keep funneling through. Over to the Annie. Now Annie is a core part of the, I guess you'd say, meta. She never really falls away, she just kind of ebbs and flows with the development of new techniques. Her only gear are 3 longswords, high offensive and defensive capabilities at a quick draw. Spells, main gear kill, which is always really nice. Cleave, offensive. Flash, defensive. Hard Bargain, also defensive, but can be offensive. It's just utility. Shadows of the Past, great way to return units from either trash to their owner's hands, but more often than not you're doing it to yourself, because if you're really returning a unit from your opponent's trash to their hand, it's probably because it's best off in the trash for them, and that is somewhat rare, but not impossible. Exceptions to why this would be great to do to your opponent are things like Last Rites, which allow you to, on hold, return, I think it's hold or conquer actually, return a unit from your trash for its energy, no, ignoring its energy cost, but you still must pay its power cost. Do either of these have Last Rites? No, so I can't even point to it. I'll be able to put it up on the screen in a moment. Next is Stacked Deck, which is great utility. Starcrossed is also really good utility. Akali Deadly Weapon is strong. I'm surprised people aren't utilizing this more, but I guess it's because it's quite situational in how you're able to use it. And also its Empower does add quite a high cost to it. Fearless Forerunner, strong staple in a lot of Fury decks that do occasionally sit on a battlefield. Grim Apothecary is a great way to just protect certain things because you can play it at reaction speed in order to essentially save another unit. It is massively underutilized by specifically me because I kind of forget to do it. I forget that it is a strong offensive option. Next is Gust Monk. Now Gust Monk is really fun because it's a 2 energy unit that you can actually make a 3 energy in order to bolster, so even while it may be good early, it's great late as well. Inferna is, as a one-off, is interesting. Same with Kaiser Survivor. This tells me that this is more just a very you like to see them in your hand, but you don't like to have oversaturation. Inferna is a really strong offensive, but weak, abysmally weak defensive. Nox's Hopeful is a super consistent red Fury card because it becomes a 2 energy 4 might quite easily. Another 3 Rangar Pouncings, 2 Shadow Order Disciples, 3 Tide Turners is great for tricks and getting more opportunities out of things such as Kaiser Survivor and your Akali Deadly Weapon, as well as next Traveling Merchant and Shadow Order Disciple, which all have move triggers. Vex Apathetic, great defensive. Between these two, I'm seeing this be high, almost gimmick. These two cards here tell me it's got a bit of gimmick going on, but it's also high offensive. This tells me it's quite defensive, but it isn't afraid to leave and come back with a lot of might. So we'll move over to the 3 battlefields, where we'll see both of them have Zorn Warrens. The Zed has Shadow Temple and the Candlelit Sanctum, so burn and review. And then over to the Annie, it likes to hold more than one battlefield and creates energy. But they're both going to go opening Zorn Warrens, mostly because that's a safety pick for me, and because it's a very strong pick overall. Now we will move over to the starting player, which will be Zed, and we'll begin with their mulligan, where 2 stacked decks, the Endless Riches and the Kaiser Survivor for turn 2. We're going to keep this actually, because I don't think this Zed deck really doesn't have a lot of turn 1 options, and their turn 1 options are more like, well, I'd probably want to build towards this and play from that anyway, so we'll keep. Over to the mulligan of the Annie, who sees a really strong opening set of cards. You know, you've got high might, you've got multiple tricks going on, but I will get rid of 1 Tide Turner because 1 is great, 2 is a bit excessive. You may also notice that I've got the sound back on for the screens, just because I felt like not having any, it's alright, but having some ambient noise when you're playing the game is quite nice. The last change I have made is I have made it so each of the decks will now have fun runes, because while it's great seeing the same ones over and over, getting familiar with the different looks is also a really important part about the game, because not every card is going to be the basic ordinary version of it. And the faster that you can be able to identify cards, no matter their looks, the better. That isn't to say that will always be the case, because sometimes if you are confused, you can pause and ask them to show you, especially if it's Chinese. If you don't understand a card, you are allowed to, and it is part of the requirements that they are able to explain to you the card and its what it does in a way that makes sense. If they cannot explain the card, and there is no available judge, well, that becomes a question of, do you trust this person? Do you have access to the internet? Cool, figure it out yourself. If there is a judge, they should also be able to explain it to you, but also don't be a rules shark. Be compassionate, be understanding that at the end of the day, Chinese cards are a lot cheaper, and so if you're wanting to play Riftbound and you want to have a cheap, easy option, Chinese cards are always going to be a beginner-friendly option, and a lot of places now sell them so you don't even have to import singles. When I first started playing, well, actually not when I first started playing, but when Spirit Forge came out, I ordered in a whole bunch of Chinese cards out of fear that there wasn't going to be enough supply, and supply became good, so now I just have a Chinese stack of cards for fun, I guess. But let us move over to the spectators screen, where I have made no adjustments, and I will just very quickly show you the card Last Rites. Give me one moment while I pull up the handy dandy screen that will allow me to show you. Last Rites. This is where having a post-review would always be very nice, but I am lazy, so if I show you, let's see, display card, doesn't want to work. One moment. There we go. Sorry, it was having a moment. But Last Rites says, when I conquer or hold, you may play a unit from your trash. You still pay its costs. So I was wrong about the energy. You still have to pay its energy, but you do have to also pay its power. So I was right on half of it. So we'll see that go away, and we'll come back to that later. As for the turn 1 of Zed, they're going to tap 1 to stacked deck and look at the top 3 cards of their main deck, where they see a Kaiser Survivor, a Traveling Merchant, so if they did mulligan 1, at least they'd have gotten that, which is, you know, that's in hindsight. And they see the other part of their combination, which is Cursed Sarcophagus. Of these 3 cards, I mean, Kaiser Survivor would be great, but these 2 cards, well, this will definitely go to the bottom of the deck, so we'll find it again eventually. But I think we'll put Cursed Sarcophagus to hand, and that will resolve. And then we'll do that whole play again, and we'll see a Treasure Trove, a Cannon, and a Storm, or a Shadow Order Disciple. Now, let's say we were to play Cursed Sarcophagus next turn. We would banish all units from the trash, which are currently 0, so that's pointless. But if we were to instead be able to play the Kaiser we have in hand next turn, well, what would be a good accompanying option for us the following turn if we chose not to play Endless Riches? My guess would be Treasure Trove, because it allows us to draw an extra card and it pays for itself in the channel phase. But also we could bring Cannon Storm of Shuriken out and allow us to flow out the stacked decks, because we've got to remember this allows us to play cards from our trash, but it would banish the cards from our hand and trash, so we wouldn't be able to see them. So the Cannon Storm of Shuriken would be a good option in this respect, and so that will come to hand. The rest will be recycled, and that will resolve, passing over to Annie. Now, I didn't read either of the legends, and I'll do that now. So Zed's legend says, when you banish a card you own, empower me. You may disempower me and exhaust me to discard 1, then draw 1 at actions phase. Annie's legend says, at the end of your turn, ready 2 runes. It is always quite funny reading the Proving Grounds or Origins legends, because it's very simple. There's not much going on. It reminds me very much of traditional League of Legends, in which everyone's passives were 1 or 2 liners. And then you move on to the new legends and it's like, oh, there's 15 things going on here. Remember to hydrate. So over to the Annie, who's going to open with a stacked deck. Top 3 cards. They've already got a Traveling Merchant, they don't need another one. Gustmonk is pretty nice, but Rangar, Pouncing, they've already got, but having more than one is always really nice, especially when you're playing quite defensively. That will resolve. And then we'll tap 2, and we'll play Noxus Hopeful. And Noxus Hopeful, because we've played another card this turn, only costs 2. So that will come out, and they will pass readying 2 runes over to the Zed, who for 2, no, not yet, will pay 2, and will bring out a Shadow Order Disciple. It says, when I move, you may burn 1 to give me +1 might this turn. Then they will pass. The reason for that is because we're now thinking, if the Noxus Hopeful was to move into a battlefield, we can, at reaction speed, play Ride the Wind and go to the opposite battlefield, and that way we can conquer on the opponent's turn without really wasting too much of our own resources, such as moving in and then them killing it. It is now the Annie's turn, and they're going to move over to this battlefield. And they're going to pass priority over to the Zed, who at action speed is going to tap to recycle 1 in order to ride the wind, the Shadow Order Disciple, to the Zorn Warrens and ready it. There is no reaction speed cards that the Annie would like to play, and so that will resolve with the Shadow Order Disciple moving. They will not pay to burn 1. Actually, they will. They'll pay 1 to burn a Rangar, and then first, the Noxus Hopeful showdown must resolve, in which there is no more responses, and so the Annie will score 1, and then discard 1, draw 1. They will discard a Tide Turner and draw 1. So we know where all 3 Tide Turners are now. There is 1 at the very bottom of the deck, and there is 1 in the trash and 1 in the hand. They get their point, and now the showdown over at the Zorn Warrens with the Shadow Order Disciple will begin. And there is no response from the Zed. At action speed, there is nothing the Annie can really do that is of value, so the Zed will now conquer to 1, and they will discard and draw. They will choose to discard their Kaiser Survivor and draw 1, and they draw into a Death Mark. Now there is nothing more that they can do, and it's still the Annie's turn, so the Annie will begin by tapping 2 to bring out a Traveling Merchant to the Zorn Warrens, and then tap 2 more to bring out a Tide Turner and swap their locations, triggering the movability of the Traveling Merchant, which says discard draw. They will then discard a Rangar Pouncing and draw into another Noxus Hopeful. And then they will end their turn by readying 2 runes with the Darkchild Legend. Over to the Zed, who will score to 2 because they held that battlefield that turn. They draw into a Treasure Trove. Now they've got 5 runes, which means they could, if they wanted, play Endless Riches, which would mean they burn everything in their hand and they're trash. Alternatively, they could play Cursed Sarcophagus, which would put 2 units straight into their into the ability of Cursed Sarcophagus, and it just says you must still pay its cost. So unfortunately, it would be this and then nothing else this turn. And because we have not banished any cards, double check. No, nothing is removed. So at this stage, it's kind of a 50-50. We could, if we wanted, burn 3 more cards and then play out the cannon, and that would be 2 power and 5 energy, so that'd be our entire turn. And we would burn 5 cards in the process and make a Shadow Clone token. I think I might do that. I'm just going to test it. Tap 2, recycle 1. Death Mark. Burn 3. 1, 2, 3. So a Rasa, another Kaiser. So we've got 2 Kaisers and a Blighted Ballax now in the trash, and we'll make a Shadow Clone. Doesn't say where, but we'll play it to base for now, and that will resolve. Then we'll move our Shadow Order Disciple, which will allow us to burn another card in order to give it +1 might, but we're not going to utilize it. And the last thing we'll do is we'll tap 3, recycle 1 in order to bring out Kennen, Storm of Shuriken, which says when you play me, burn 2 more. We're going to burn into a Pack of Wonders and a Cleave. Our trash is looking mighty big right now. And we will pass over to the Annie, who will score to 2. And then they will move... Oh, actually, do they want... Because if they move the Traveling Merchant, they move, draw one, discard, draw. They'd have to discard probably the Shadow Order Disciple and draw into a new card. And then when they conquer, they discard and draw again. A second card that might want to discard is Flash, but that's a really strong defensive spell. And so in this position, we have to think, what do we want to get rid of? What's the most valuable thing to get rid of? And in some ways, we just have to mess around and find out. So the Traveling Merchant will move and will discard the Shadow Order Disciple and draw into an Akali's Deadly Weapon. I was about to say Silent, but that's the green one. There is no response from the opponent, and we will conquer. And we will discard the Rankguard Pouncing, of all things, and draw another card. Then we'll move the Tide Turner back, and the Nox's Hopeful back, tap 1 in order to play a stacked deck, looking at the top 3 cards, and see... Oh, there we go. 2 Grim Apothecaries and a Ferrous Forerunner. We like the Ferrous Forerunner, and so we're going to bring it to hand and recycle the rest. It's a shame seeing the Grim Apothecary is gone, but it's okay. Then it's not the end of the world. Then for 2 more, we'll play a Noxus Hopeful, because we played a stacked deck this turn. That's our second card of the turn. And then for 3, we will play out an Akali Deadly Weapon, which we could empower for 2, but not right now. And then at the end of the turn, we will ready 2 runes up and pass. It is now the Zed's turn. They're at 2 points. They are able to get to 4 points this turn, but they've got to think about what their play, like what's happening here. What's the strategy? We could move in and conquer and give a spell flow this turn, but we would have to discard draw. At the moment, Rasa is 1 power, and so we might be best trying to force... we haven't banished yet. This definitely has got me at a point where it's like an experience obviously plays a massive part of what you'll normally do next. And as such, I'm thinking, because if we do this, we banish all the units and we still have to pay for their cost, but we banish out of our trash 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, putting us down to 7 in our trash, which means Rasa would cost us 3. We do this beforehand, and we float 1 energy, and then we pay 3, 4, and the other purple, leaving us at 3 energy with 1 up. Cursed Sarcophagus would get rid of all of the units, and so we couldn't Rasa for free again, especially because we don't have the power, the Chaos Power, I should say, the Chaos Energy, I should say. Oh no, Chaos Power, that's correct. If we were to do this, everything goes. Which means we do lose the Rasa and the Kaisers, and so we almost need to Cursed Sarcophagus first in order to then be able to do Endless Riches without losing too many units. But it's about the ordering. Do we... Actually, if we move with Kennen, we discard the Rasa and draw into another card. I'm not going to hover, because that would spoil the game for us. And then we'll have 4 cards. We might have another card that'll tell us something else, but we'll be able to give something else flow. We could give stacked deck or... actually, only stacked deck because we're at 5. Stacked deck, flow, pay for it, banish it. And then we could cursed sarcophagus for 4. The stacked deck would let us put another card in our hand for pay for everything. We could move the shadow clone in, banish a unit. We don't need the might, so we're not going to worry about that. Otherwise we would banish possibly the cleave at this stage. Yeah, I think we're going to do that. We're going to move the cannon in here. There is no move triggers to worry about. A showdown will begin. There is no response from the Z. The Annie could burn the flash in order to bring this back and save it, but they're not really worried. They've got enough might, so they're going to kill that. The Z will score to 3. They will then add onto the chain the cannon ability and the Zorn Warrens, but they're going to choose to do it in that order. The cannon will first trigger, saying when I conquer, give a spell in your trash flow. They're going to elect to give stacked deck flow, and so I'm just going to put it here. In a normal game, what I've found is most effective is the cannon will pick it up and say, I am giving this flow, and they'll put it sideways on a different area of their mat in order to say, I am giving it flow. I'm not going to change this card from the flow card, but I also need to recognize that it is not in my hand, nor is it leaving the trash, but I need us to be on the same page. So they're going to give stacked flow. Then the discard draw one of the Zorn Warrens will trigger. They're going to discard the Rasa and draw into another death mark. Okay, doesn't change much, but it's good to know. They will then score a point for the conquer, and that will resolve. They will then pay 1 energy in order to play the stacked deck. Look at the top 3 cards. They see the Rek'Sai. Oh, that is such a good thing to see, especially leading into next turn. I think I'm starting to see some of the patterns here. That's got to come to hand. The rest, I know that sucks to see the death mark gone, because it will be the 3rd death mark, but we've seen 2. That means 4 triggers. That's fine. That will now be removed from the game, as you can imagine, flow. And then we'll move... Okay, we've got 2 options. We could move the Shadow Order Disciple to burn another card and hope it's a unit, or we could just move the Shadow Clone and accept that we can have this as offensive. And I think that we're going to do that. We're going to move the Shadow Clone, score to 5. We will then discard the Treasure Trove and draw into a Rangar Pouncing. Okay, the Treasure Trove would be better than getting maybe rid of the Death Mark, because we're not making that much power at the moment. It's quite an expensive thing going on here. So for 1, 2, 3, 4, recycle 1. Cursed Sarcophagus comes out, and its ability will go on the chain. When you play this, banish all units from your trash. That will be the Rangar Pouncing, the Kaiser Survivor, the Rasa, the other Kaiser Survivor, the Traveling Merchant, and the final Rasa. Those will now all be banished. Very small pile of cards now. It is important to note that we banished those cards, so if we go to the removed, the only card we have not banished with the Cursed Sarcophagus is Stacked Deck, which means we cannot play it because A, it is not a unit, and B, it was banished in a different way. Also, we technically did banish the Stacked Deck, and so I forgot to empower the Z Legend, which says we can now exhaust him and discard and draw one. So what we should have actually done is, and I'm going to just ignore the fact that I didn't do it earlier. Well, actually I'm going to pretend I did it earlier by exhausting him, spending this, and actually discarding the Rangar from hand, which would then be part of the removed list. So if we look here, now we've got another Rangar Pouncing here as part of the removed list. And then by banishing all of those cards, we re-empower the Z Legend in order to do it again next turn. So because we only have 7 cards in our trash, we cannot play the Rasas so far. But we also have no energy, which means we can't play anything else, so we have to pass. Over to Annie. They draw into a Kaiser Survivor, and they still have their Ferrous Forerunner. At the moment, they see the opponent is out of energy, and so they will just begin by moving a Noxus Hopeful into this battlefield. They will pass priority, in which the Shadow Clone will die, and the Annie will score to 4. They must now discard draw, and they're going to choose to discard the flash and draw into a Shadows of the Past. Now, Shadows of the Past, because they see the Cursed Sarcophagus, realise, well, it's a bit late now, but I'll keep that in mind for next game, because if I can get this out before they can get this out, I can return units back to my opponent's hand, which forces them out of their ability to be banished by Cursed Sarcophagus. But do I have units that I want to return to hand? Well, yeah, I do. I had to discard 2 Rangar Pouncings, so it's really nice seeing that, actually. So we'll begin by tapping 3, recycling 1 in order to play that, and of the 2 Annie units, we're going to bring back both Rangar Pouncings. Now, it's worth noting that in a game, you must announce exactly what you are doing to your opponent, and so they can make informed decisions about what they are wanting to do. And these are now public knowledge, even though they are private to the hand. So you can't be like, I'm going to return 2 cards, and then have the opponent have to look through your entire trash in order to figure it out later. Next is on for 6 energy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Recycle 1. A Ferrous Forerunner will come out to this battlefield. Now, if we were to conquer over here, we would A, go up to 5 points, congrats, and B, kill the Kinnan, but it would cost us moving in with the Noxus Hopeful and something else. If we moved in with just the Akali, it says when I move to a battlefield, you may deal 1 damage to a unit at a battlefield. I move to or from. And if it's empowered, she deals 2 damage instead, but she has +1 might. But she's a 3, so she'd go up to 4 on empower, which is still not enough to kill this. So it would have to be a trade for this into this, and they're pretty happy to do that. They say, I'm going to move in, I'm going to pass priority, and so these 2 units will die. The reason they want to trade there is because they're now trying to stem the bleeding of the number of points, because the Kinnan can no longer go to 6 holding and maybe figure out a way to get both of these units off and go to 7 next turn. This means they have to commit to a 6, and next turn the Annie can go 5 into 6 and neat them on points rather than being on a 1 behind cycle. It does not mean that it's a foolproof strategy, but it's a pretty good strategy. Anyway, the Annie will end their turn by readying 2 runes and passing over to the Zed, who is going to draw into an Up from the Deep. Now they finally are starting to get to a point where they're feeling pretty confident with how they're going. So they're going to begin by tapping 3 and bringing out Rek'Sai Breacher. It says, friendly units played from anywhere other than a player's hand have Accelerate. The Zed is then going to disempower and exhaust in order to discard 1 and draw 1. They're going to discard the Up from the Deep and draw into a stacked deck. They are then considering moving the Shadow Order Disciple in order to burn an additional card this turn, which would put their trash up to 10, which would mean that we could bring out both Rasas accelerated, if we can afford to, which we could because it would be 2, and then it'd be able to actually only do 1, because this is a purple, and then the Accelerate would be an additional energy and Chaos Runes, so it's 2 Chaos Runes and an energy to bring out Accelerated, a 6 might. We run into here, we kill a Ferrous Forerunner, but that's all we really do, because we couldn't bring out the second one Accelerated. But it'd be really funny. Technically, by the way, the player shadow unit token is from from somewhere other than your hand, but you still have to pay the accelerate cost. So, I'm tempted just to stacked deck and see where we go. Stacked deck comes out. 3, we see another Rek'Sai, we see the final Rasa, and we see a Shadow Order Disciple. We'll put the final Rasa to hand, recycle the rest, that will resolve. We'll then recycle 1 in order to bring out that Rasa. It cannot be accelerated, so it is going to stay like that. Then we are going to play from the removed our first Rasa, which will cost us 1 energy, or 1 power, and then we'll recycle 1 power and exhaust in order to have it enter ready. And then we will move the Shadow Order Disciple and we will burn 1. And we're burning a Vi, which kind of hurts, but it's okay. And we'll conquer up to 6, and then we'll discard the Death Mark and draw into a Pack of Wonders. And then we'll move the Rasa into here and kill the Noxus Hopeful. The reason we don't kill the Ferrous Forerunner is because killing the Ferrous Forerunner just makes 2 more units that we have to deal with that we can't really afford to deal with. Also, we played a unit, so we have to exhaust this. And we'll pass over to the Annie, who scores 2-5. They draw into a Starcrossed, which would be really, really strong, just to have defensively. So we need to enter this turn with 1 rune up, so we can ready up 2 runes with our Annie in order to play Starcrossed on the opponent's turn if they decide to fight us at the Ferrous Forerunner. We'll begin by tapping 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, just 3. Recycle 1. We're going to move the Akali. Oh, actually, back off on that one. We're going to tap 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Annie comes out. Recycle 1 for the Annie cost. Annie says, when you play me, return a spell from your trash. Looking at the Annie's pile, we could return a stacked deck, or both, or one, sorry, a Flash, or Shadows of the Past. Returning a Shadows from the Past allows us to return 2 units to our hand, which could be both Noxus Hopefuls. And so this would be 1 power, and then these would be 4 energy in total. So if we look, we would pay this power to play the Shadows of the Past, and then be able to play out all both Noxus Hopefuls this turn, and have the 1 energy remaining. So we'll do that. We'll play out Shadows of the Past. Oh, that's Shadow Order Disciple, sorry. There it is. This can go back to the trash. Shadow's Order Disciple will cost 1 power, which we'll pay now. And we will return to hand both Noxus Hopefuls. That will resolve. And then for 1, 2, 3, 4, both Noxus Hopefuls will be played to base. And then the Ferrous Forerunner will stay at these Dawn Warrens, actually. And we will move the Tide Turner into this battlefield in order to combat. There is no response from either party, so both of them will die. The Akali will move over this battlefield holding 2-6. And then we will pass readying 2 runes. Now, it's also important to note that if we had moved away from both battlefields, technically the Rengar, or the Zed will win. But we're looking at the opponent's battlefield and going, hey look, I know what's in your removed. I know that you can have it enter accelerated. I know that the biggest, most terrifying thing you have is a Rasa. But it has to enter from somewhere other than your hand. Which means if you choose to, for any reason, bring out that Rasa, you will at most have access to 9 plus 15 might. I have access to 6 here, and I have access to 3 here. This will not trade into this without it dying. This will not trade into this without it dying. Which means my chances of you winning this turn are a gamble, but not over. What we'll begin by doing first is reading everything to see if we've got another option. You may discard 1 as an additional cost to play me. If you did, you may play a Shadow Clone token unit, which would be entering ready. I just realized we can't even play the Rasa because we don't have the runes for it because we need Chaos, not Fury. As such, I think the Zed has lost. Because if they clear out both of these, they have no way to get rid of these 3 in the back line. We move into here, and then for 1, 2, 3, recycle 1, a Starcross comes out targeting the Rasa and targeting our Annie. There is no response from the Zed, and so that will resolve. And yeah, the Rek'Sai moves in, they trade. Yeah, because if we look at the Zeds removed, they could bring in a Rengar, but it's a 5, not a 6, which means we couldn't kill this. The Kai'Sa would be a 4, not enough to kill this. We would need a way in order to increase its might. Unfortunately, we don't. And the Vi is in the trash, which would be a non-option for this. Unfortunately, it does look like it's over for the Zed, and just to keep things tidy, I'm just going to say, hey look, unfortunately, not much the Zed can do, and so they will be eliminated, and we'll move on to game 2, where we'll jump over to the sideboards and talk about those. So for the Zed, they already have 2 Endless Riches. Going up to a 3rd feels weird because I haven't used it yet, but maybe. spells against the odds. They're not really doing clumping, so we're not worried. They're not playing a lot of gear. Flash would be great defensively. Same with Hard Bargain. Invert Timelines is a great way to reset both hands, and Angler Beasts would be great if they had a lot of small units. If we remember, they were really relying on the Noxus Hopefuls, and they pulled out a Ferrous Forerunner, so they were winning on small might differences. Things such as Flash would give us a chance to bring back our units, and so maybe I'll bring those in. And we're going to see leave. Two copies of Up from the Deep. Because while these could be accelerated in, very expensive. And the next battlefield will be Candlelit Sanctum. As for the Annie, they were feeling really good about what just happened, so they don't need to worry about these two cards. They didn't feel like their hand was bricked, so they don't need to worry about Invert Timelines, but maybe there's another reason for that. Rebuke. They never had a unit they wanted to see go so badly. I mean, that Starcrossed they sat on for quite some time, but having Starcrossed was really nice, but we don't need 3. Switcheroo would be a really strong way to overcome those Rasas, and so I'm going to throw that in. And then looking at the Thermo Beam would actually be absolutely crippling if they have the Cursed Sarcophagus come out. And it's the only way to really, besides Ravenbloom Prefect, kill the gear. Ravenbloom Prefect will be the gear that comes out. And we don't really want to bring up Thermo Beam for the Longsword potential. So maybe next game that'll come out if we need it. And Kha'Zix's another ambush is really strong, so maybe we'll do that. And we'll see leave. We're not holding much, so we're going to not worry. Actually, we'll keep the Vex Apathetics, because if we get a chance to bring it out, it absolutely cripples the Accelerate option. We'll be going second, so I'll get rid of both Travelling Merchants. That doesn't need to be here. And the Inferno as well. I just don't see it being a great option. And then our next one will be Threshold of the Grey. The Zed will choose to go first, and opening mulligans for the Zed gives them a lot of options, but seeing the Rasa this early kind of hurts, so we do need to consider. Actually, it's a great discard option. It's a great discard option, actually. We'll keep and hope we get a better draw. As for the opponent, Ravenbloom Prefect turn 1 is hilarious as a way to just kind of stem the opportunity to play Cursed Sarcophagus. It makes them it forces them into something awkward. So we'll keep this opening hand, and as for the Zed, they are turn 1 going to play a stacked deck. Looking at the top 3 cards of their... to top. It'll go to the top when I ignore it. So it's only these 3 we can really look at. Cursed Sarcophagus to hand, to bottom, and ignore that card. We'll resolve, and then we will pass, and we are now going to move over to the spectator's screen, where it is Annie's first turn, and they're going to tap 3 to bring out their Ravenbloom Prefect and pass. The Zed is seeing this and going, we need to kill that before we even consider either of these options. So we are going to, for 1, 2, 3, 4, recycle 1, bring out Zed from the shadows. You may discard 1 as a additional cost of play me, and we are going to discard a Rasa, and that will allow us to make a Shadow Clone token. We will then pass, and it is the Annie's turn. Annie is going to move their Ravenbloom Prefect to the Candlelit Sanctum, and there is no response from the opponent, and so we'll score 1 point, and then we'll do Candlelit Sanctum, which says when you conquer here, look at the top 2 cards of your main deck. You may recycle 1 or both of them. Put those back. Put those you didn't back in any order. So we'll now look at the top 2 cards of our main deck and see it's a Noxus and a Hopeful. Noxus Hopeful, sorry, and a Tide Turner. We like these both, and so I'm actually going to change the order for Noxus Hopeful to be in the slot 1, and then Tide Turner to be in the slot 2. I will just very briefly jump back over to the mulligan and show you that there's these little buttons down here that you can swap the ordering. So if you want to, that's how you do it. And then we will leave those as are. And for 1, we will stacked deck. 1, 2, 3. See once again those 3 cards, and we'll put that Noxus Hopeful to hand and recycle the rest. That would have been actually a really good opportunity for us to not have stacked deck, because we knew the next cards, but it's okay, because now we'll tap to play a Noxus Hopeful to base, and then end our turn by readying 2 runes. It is now the Zed's turn, and they're going, well, I really wanted to kill that Ravenbloom Prefect. Now's my chance. We will begin by moving in. We will... I'm just thinking, because if we move this over to here, it's not technically attacking. And so we don't have to trigger it then. And then we could ride the wind in order to bring it over here. But to trigger the attack, we'd have to banish the Rasa, which feels awkward. So maybe the first thing we'll do is we'll Deathmark. Tap 2, recycle a Fury, because we don't need the Fury, we need the Chaos. Look at the top. Oh, sorry, burn 3, not look at. So we'll burn a Kaiser, burn a Shadow Order Disciple, and burn a Traveling Merchant. That will resolve. We will then move this into this battlefield directly and choose to banish a Traveling Merchant in order to give this +4 might to this attack. And we will pass priority over to the Annie, who is going to tap 3. Actually, tap 2, recycle 1 in order to longsword and quick attach it onto the Ravenbloom Prefect, putting her up to 5 might. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we are. Because that's a 2, and that's a 3, that's a 4. And then the Zed is going to tap to recycle 1 in order to ride the wind their Zed into here and ready it. And unfortunately for the Annie, there is nothing else they can do, and so the Ravenbloom Prefect will die, the longsword will go back to base, but they will choose to kill the Zed and leave the Shadow, and they will conquer 2-1, and look at the top 2 cards and change the order if they so wish. They're going to choose to put the Endless Riches to the bottom. Actually, yeah, they'll put it to the bottom of the deck, because they've seen the Ravenbloom Prefect, they doubt there's a second, and they'll keep the other card, the Rek'Sai, to the top of the hand. And they are just going to have to pass. It is now the Annie's turn. The Shadow clone goes down to 0 might. And the Noxus Hopeful will move in, and it will be a kill for the Annie, and they will score to 2. Then they can look at the top 2 cards of their main deck. See a Tide Turner, see a Kaiser. They're going to change the order on that one, putting the Kaiser back into slot 1. And they're not going to worry about the Tide Turner. It's strong, and it's okay because it can remove units later. And they're going to, for 4, because we only have the 1 Ravenbloom Prefect, which means the next thing we're hunting for is the Thermo Beam. I don't remember if we actually added it in, and that is going to be a very big issue if we did not. I don't think we did because we didn't want to kill the longswords. So we're actually after Shadow Order Disciple now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not Shadow Order Disciple, Shadows of the Past. And he comes out. We return to the stack deck. Stack deck will be played. 1, 2, 3. We don't see it. We see the first 2. We see the Starcross. I've done this twice now, where we trigger Candle at Sanctum, and then we stack deck. Kaiser will allow us to see cards more frequently, and so we'll put that to hand, and then we'll end our turn readying 2 runes and passing over to Zed, who now sees the Ravenbloom Prefect is gone, and they check their trash and they say, well, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 units. Not bad, but I can do a bit better. Have I banished anything? Well, yes, I did actually banish the Traveling Merchant. So this will be technically empowered. And so we're going to disempower and exhaust in order to discard and draw. We are going to choose to discard the Rasa and draw into a cannon. We're then for 1, 2, 3, 4, recycle 1, playing the Cursed Sarcophagus, and we will choose. We have to banish all of the units, which would be both Rasas, 1 and 2, the Kaiser, the Shadow Order Disciple, and our Zed Legend, Chosen Champion, not Legend, and they will all be removed. If we now look at our removed, everything besides the Traveling Merchant can be used to bring out through Cursed Sarcophagus, which we will exhaust. Actually, no, we won't exhaust, because if we were to do that, we've only got 3. We can't actually afford to bring anything out, but we did get that down, which is important. There's the Shadow Order, Shadows of the Past. That is incredibly bad timing. We'll bring that out, and we'll bring to hand just the one unit we actually control, and that will resolve. And then for 1, 2, 3, we will play that Ravenbloom Prefect in the hopes that we can maybe stop the next piece of gear, because we actually never saw the Endless Riches as the Annie. But maybe they realized they had to, because they did it so... Remove. Oh, it's because I can't see. Oh, it's because that's the Annie. Because they had to do it so quickly, maybe they have to run 2 Cursed Sarcophagus. I think this is why you would use, in a normal game of Riftbound, you may actually put all of those banished cards underneath the Cursed Sarcophagus, much like people do with the Djinn Legend, because having multiple different piles of banish seems like the only effective way to maintain these types of almost isolated groupings of these cards. Especially because cards like Cursed Sarcophagus came out in Unleashed, but it wasn't that popular because the amount of things that interact with banish was nil, really. But now we have ways to interact with that banish, it's different. The Z, by the way, is empowered because we banished. The Annie also scores to 3 for holding the Candlelit Sanctum, and they will move back. And then they will move to this battlefield, scoring to 4. And they will recycle 1 in order to group the longsword onto the Annie and increase its might to 5, and they'll end their turn by readying 2 runes and passing over to the Z, who's at 6 runes, and they have realised the Ravenbloom Prefect has come out, so they cannot play Endless Riches, which is, you know, it is what it is. That's a shame, because it might have been nice eventually. But for 3, they'll bring out Rek'Sai Breacher, not accelerated, and then for 3, recycle 1, they'll bring out Kennen, which says when you play me, burn 2, so we're going to burn a Travelling Merchant and a Pack of Wonders. Then we will exhaust and disempower the Z Legend. In order to discard and draw, we're going to choose to discard Perfect Execution and draw into a Cleave and pass over to the Annie, who will have held to 5. They'll bring their Annie back, they'll move their Noxus Hopeful over and score to 6, and now they just need to build a very big army. So for 1, 2, 3, 4, they bring out Kai'Sa, Survivor, and for 2, they're going to bring out the Gust Monk and not pay the additional because it's no point, and then they're going to end their turn by readying 2 runes and passing over to the Z. Now the Z, I feel like I've just not really given it a lot of opportunity to play. It is, I think that it's my fault that the Z isn't doing too well. I see what they're wanting to do. I see the gimmicks, I see the playstyle, I just don't think that I've 100% guaranteed it, and against a mirror match of like a Chaos Fury, you're essentially playing who has the more mainstream archetype, or who is better paired into this. And Annie's high offensive and defensive, rather than mechanical playstyle, gives her a beginner-friendly opportunity, as opposed to the Z, which would require you to hone your craft a little bit more. But with that in mind, they're at 7 runes. If they chose to banish their entire hand and play cards from trash, because, well, they wouldn't be these cards, they would have access to 2 energy, which would be useless in so many ways. So what they almost have to do, give a spell flow. Stacked deck wouldn't be a bad idea. Cursed Sarcophagus, I mean, we almost need more burn. Deathmark, burn 3 for 1 energy, 2 power. I think we'll do that first, so we'll 1 energy, float 1 power. Oh, sorry, float 1 energy, play Deathmark from trash, burn 3, 1, 2, 3, Vi, a flash, and a treasure trove, and that will now be creating a shadow clone and removed. We now have 8 cards in trash. Because we banished a card just then with the flow, we're going to exhaust and disempower in order to discard the Shadow Order Disciple and draw into the next Deathmark. We don't want to go too far down. I also feel like I just got rid of Chaos Runes instead of Fury Runes, which would have been... Did I? Let me check the logs. I sent a Fury and a Chaos, so 50-50. We will then move... We move the cannon to here, use the 1 energy in order to cleave it. It goes up to 7 might this turn. That will resolve. The Annie will respond by tapping 3, recycling 1, playing Rangar Pouncing. It'll be a 7, because it's not Assault. It's important to note that this was a misreading by me during an actual live game where it says, I can be played to a battlefield you're attacking. And that is because Rangar Pouncing was introduced in Spiritforge, which is a 2 sets before, well actually a set before Ambush was really introduced. Rangar Pouncing follows the same issue as Shen Kinku, if I actually bring that one up. Can I specify? Hopefully that will work. Let me just double check it. There we are. Shen Kinku, which says play anytime, even before spells and abilities resolve, including a battlefield you control. The wording of Shen Kinku is specifically, I can be played defensively, while Rangar Pouncing says, I can be played to a battlefield you control, but it has the extra line of, I can be played to a battlefield you're attacking. And that is because that next little bit down here is specifically designed to remind players that they can in fact play Rangar at ambush speed during a showdown, either whether you are attacking or defending. But because of that, I read that more as, oh, you can only play it while you're attacking, you can't play it while you're defending. Though it was a mistake by me, and that's part of learning, unfortunately. You will read cards wrong consistently. I also just noticed this will be a very interesting little adjustment. There we are. Just a weird spacing on that side I've never noticed until now. So that means that Rangar does not gain the bonus defense, but it does mean they can play it defensively. So this is now 7/2/7, and there is no response from the Zed, so the cannon will die, but so will both of those units. They see in the back line that the opponent has, you know, quite a few units, but one of them is quite small, so it's cool. But they need to have a way to defend at least one battlefield. They'll move the Rek'Sai into the Candlelit Sanctum and look at the 2 top cards after, and then they'll conquer. They see the Rangar Pouncing and the cannon. They're going to change the order. They need the Rangar if they're going to have anything. So they scored a 1. Oh, sorry, scored a 2. Then they will tap the Cursed Sarcophagus and float 1 energy in order to play from the Cursed Sarcophagus Rasa. Then with that 1 energy, and then the following 4 energy, recycle 1 Fury, they'll bring out Kaiser Survivor Accelerated, which will move into this battlefield and conquer 2/3. They will also draw for the Kaiser's conquerability, and they'll just pass and they'll say, hey look, I have done all I can with the resources I have provided. It is up to you, and if you can get me off of this battlefield, then congrats, you win. The Annie is going to kind of say, well, yeah, that's a good point, but also, you're at 3. I'm at 6. I don't need to fight you this turn. So for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, recycle 1, I'm going to bring up Ferris Forerunner. And I see that Kaiser over there. I see the 4 might you are relying on, and you will get 1 energy, sure, but the best thing you can do for 1 energy is cleave, which means that the biggest thing that Kaiser can do is waste a card. The exceptions obviously would be if a stacked deck came out, but the number of 1 energy cards in the Fury and Chaos domains are very limited, and very often not helpful for a defensive position. Stay hydrated. So the Kaiser is looking very weak at the moment, to say the least. And so the Annie's going to walk in, and they're going to say, hey look, I'm going to send my 5 against your 4, what do you got? And they're going to say, well, I'm going to get the 1 energy, congratulations. And so you'll see both player now gains the 1 energy on the wonderful little tabs down here. I'm not going to make those into new decals, I'm just going to leave them where they are because that's kind of handy. But the Kaiser will die, and the Annie will score to 7. And they'll say, that was really cool. I'll tell you what, I'm going to see how much you are going to put into holding that battlefield. And so I'm going to put 2 units there. And I'm going to pass, readying 2 runes. And if you can get me off of that battlefield, congrats. You will hold to 5. But I still have in the backline my Kaiser. I will have a Ferris Forerunner for the following turn, and I have 4 runes on defense as an Annie. I'm sure I've got something. And so the Z will score to 4, congratulations to them. They've got the Shadow Clone in base, which can assault for 4, killing the Raven Bloom. If they've got a way to increase the might further, well, congrats. Well, they have 4 here, and they have 5 here, which means they can clear this battlefield out, but something would die, and it would most likely be the Rengar pouncing. Because it would be 5 into their 5, and then 4 into this 3, so the Shadow Clone would live, but the Rengar would die. And it would cost them to have 2 energy remaining. They do have enough to play out Accelerated. Another Rasa? No, because they've only got 1. So they can't even play out the Rasa Accelerated. What else can they bring out? Well, they could bring out a Traveling Merchant Accelerated, a Shadow Order Disciple Accelerated, maybe, but those are the only real options because, well, actually, they could also bring out the Kaiser Survivor Accelerated, but they would burn everything under the sun. So at this stage, they're in a really awkward position. But they know the opponent's backline. And so they're going to say, hey, look, I'm gonna move in with this. And I'm going to choose to banish the Cannon Storm of Shuriken. Oh, sorry, it needs to be banished from trash, doesn't it? Trash, yes. I'm going to banish the, from my trash, the Traveling Merchant. Removed. And that will also empower my Z Legend. And that will give me 4 might. So he's empowered, and 4 might here. And then I'm going to tap 3, recycle 1, to play Rengar, which will go up to 5 because I'm assaulting. What do you got? What do you got? Well, the 2, that's going to flash. I'm going to target these 2 units. And you've got no response, and he has no response, so they'll come back to base. Which means nothing dies. Congrats, you go to 5. Both players create an energy for their troubles, which means that the Rengar now, the Z now has access to 3 energy, which is really cool. But they're still in the same awkward position. Well, they're going to float another energy in order to and tap their Cursed Sarcophagus in order to play from removed their other Rasa. And they're going to put it to this battlefield. And the 2 units will no longer have assault. So the Z now has 2 floating energy and 1 readied energy. They can't play the cannon, so they're actually just going to disempower and discard the cannon in order to draw into a treasure trove. They can't kill the treasure trove, which is useless. They can't kill anything with the Endless Riches. Do they have anything with flow? Well, they have perfect execution, which is useless. They have... That's it. They have perfect execution, which means that anything from their trash that they can play is useless, because nothing here wants to be read. The best thing they can do is at this stage play the Death Mark, burn 3 more, and put a Shadow Clone token somewhere, I guess. And that's kind of what they're going to do, is they're going to tap 2, recycle another card, burn 3, 1, 2, 3, and make another Shadow Clone, but this one can live in base. And they're just going to pass and say, hey, look, I've done the best I can. I think I've lost, but I'm gonna hold on. Well, the Annie drew into a cleave, which is always a terrible thing to see if you're on the defensive side. So for 1 energy, they're going to cleave their Kaiser Survivor up to 7. Then they're going to check their trash and say, is there anything else I could do? No, not really. That's okay. I've done what I need to do. I have access to 7 here, 6 here, I have access to 5 here, and 5 here. So I've got 15, 17, 23 might to your what? 9 and 9. I think I've won. So what do we do first? Well, we are going to begin to... We are going to begin by doing something really weird. We're going to run in the Annie solo to this battlefield, and at reaction speed, play a Grim Apothecary targeting the Annie. Grim Apothecary will come out and return the Annie to our hand, and it will be a 3 in which they will die, but they're going to take the Rengar with them. and then for 1, 2, 3, 4 recycle one, they're going to play the Annie and be able to return a spell from their trash to their hand. And they're going to choose to bring Cleave back to their hand. And then they're going to tap their last energy to play Cleave, targeting the Ferris Forerunner this time, not the Kaiser Survivor, increasing its might to 9 on attack. And because they targeted their combat started at the threshold of the grey, both players will get an energy. And so now they're going to move into this threshold of the grey with their 9 might Ferris Forerunner, and both players get an additional energy, and that way, if they need to, they have Hard Bargain in case they have given the opportunity to the opponent to play a spell. Unfortunately for the opponent, there is nothing they can do because Flow is never at reaction speed, or action speed at this point. And so these two units will die, and the Annie will draw one for the Conquer, and then they're going to move in as a 3, 5, 12 might to this battlefield, which, you know, that's cool because they can kill 9, so they can kill the Kaiser and the Gust Monk, but they cannot kill the Ravenbloom Prefect, and as such, funnily enough, the thing that wins them the game is the Ravenbloom Prefect, which's ability never even triggered, because this was already out. And unfortunately for the Z, that is that. This was a really fascinating combination of two different archetypes in the same domain, much like we saw with LeBlanc and Victor. We see Annie has a really standard, really straightforward, beginner-friendly design going on, and Zed has a really fascinating. There is something there, but it's not there yet, I think is the easiest way to explain it. So I'd say, what can we learn from this? Well, firstly, ordering matters. Looking at the bigger picture is always a really important part of the game. We see that the Cursed Sarcophagus Rek'Sai was a great combination, but maybe we don't need as many Fury Runes as was in that pile. Maybe we need more gold generation. Or maybe we need to bring in the Treasure Hunter rather than having so much emphasis on discard or banish in order to maintain its effectiveness. I think that there are some really interesting mechanics going on with this Zed that with enough time, with enough practice, could be incredibly powerful. But at the same time, Annie represents the core gameplay loop of a red-purple, a Fury Chaos. They represent effectively what could only be described as a strong starter deck. You could pilot this and do some really fun things. You could do some really, really cool things the more experience you have with this type of combination. But from a starter position, you can do some really big, just simple actions. What's that? I've got a Cleave, I'm going to apply it to a big unit, make it bigger, I'm going to move in, I'm going to kill, cool. Or you could do what you did, or you saw, where I move the Annie in, I allow it to be returned, I allow a sacrifice to go on the chain, I allow myself to play the Annie to bring back the Cleave in order to further increase the might of my units, because while it isn't necessary, it can make a difference, especially when you have no knowledge of the opponent's hand. And having the ability to make those judgment calls comes with experience, comes with time. So if you're playing the game and you're feeling like you're sitting there going, I don't see these plays, until they point it out to me, congrats, you are a normal player. The people who can see those plays, I don't see all the plays. Some people see the plays immediately, some people see 15 plays immediately, but it comes with practice, and so never be disgruntled if you don't see the optimal, but talk to your opponent. I mentioned in the previous video that me and my opponents sat down and talked about all the possibilities that could go forward, and maybe there's a line in which they win. But having those conversations is a key and essential part about being able to develop more critical thinking. So with that in mind, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe, and leave in the comments below a deck list that you'd like me to add. If you think I missed anything about this Zed, feel free to mention it, because it will be staying in the wheel. And I will catch you guys in the next video.